So I just got out of the theater, and I think overall the movie was okay. It was good. I wouldn't say it's bad or you shouldn't watch it. Maybe I went in with a little bit more expectations, but overall, I didn't find myself dozing off or bored at any point, in some sense. But the first hour, I would say. It takes a while. I mean, there's only one fight scene, and the entire hour is about building up who Michael is, and you get this aura of, he's larger than life. Everyone is scared of him. Some people respect him. All of that is fine. I think the movie borrows heavily from Godfather, and I got that vibe even when seeing the trailer. The music is, definitely a lot of music. A lot of the background track is taken from Godfather. And I would say, this time around in terms of music, yes, it was good, but it was overdone, right? Just like in Kurup, the music was just overbearing at times. Even though what you're watching on the screen is fairly ordinary, the music tells you otherwise, right? So that part I didn't enjoy as much. I felt like there were some conversations where it should have just been silence, but the music was really building up to some grand thing. So background music wise was a little bit overdone in places. However, at the end of the day, if you want to watch a stylish, Godfather gangster-ish kind of movie with, of course, Mammootty in the center stage, this is going to satisfy you, right? If that's what you're here for, this is going to satisfy you. Don't look for very in-depth story or shocking moments even. You're not going to find that. I know this director loves to shoot stylized movies and all of those things. I think he achieves that in some ways, but is it more style than substance? Yes, unfortunately, yes for me. I think after the intermission, there were two songs that I felt was forced, that really dragged the narrative down, and I'm like, okay. But every time Mammootty was on screen, I wanted more of him. Every time he was on screen or he's about to say something, you hang on every word he says. I think he looks phenomenal. He's extremely stylish. His charisma just oozes off the screen, and I think that is credit to both the music, the camera angle, the director, of course, and Mammootty himself, right? So that aspect, I think the movie knocks it out of the park. The fight scenes and action, I would say, is a little underwhelming. A lot of it, again, is just stylized, whereas the movements and the action is very basic, but just the background music and the zooming in and zooming out and the slow-mo, they really try to make the fight seem more incredible because of that. The other thing that I felt was, the characters around the world building, all of that was fine. It was enjoyable. If they make a part 2, I would watch it. But the other aspect that I would say is fairly weak is the villain. I like the build-up of the villain, maybe even the backstory. Fairly intrigued by it, and the build-up was great until the villain shows up. So once again, even the villain for me was more style than substance in some ways. I wish that the villain really had a bite, because it really, they try to present him as the Antichrist, right? Or the one that will bring death to Mammootty's character. And you really want to see someone who's able to go hand in hand or toe to toe with Mammootty. And that's not the case. It just feels like Mammootty can just knock off anyone. And that to me was slightly disappointing, right? You want a strong villain. No, you want someone who's deeply threatening. Don't tell us about it. Show us why he's threatening, right? I wish that was the case. Maybe for part 2, they can bring someone like that. Someone with, I would have, I was thinking, wouldn't it be phenomenal if Fahad was the villain, right? Or someone that we kind of know, who's got that weightage behind him as an actor. If that person can play opposite Mammootty as a villain, it would have really elevated the story, the movie, the conflict much more than this particular actor who plays the villain. And so, how the villain gets killed off and all that is somewhat anticlimactic. I felt like everything was a bit too easy for Mammootty to get rid of his opponents. And you have the similar themes that you've seen before in a gangster movie where there's infighting within the house, family is given importance, there's a lot of family politics that's going around, and I like those things. In terms of direction, it was fine. It was stylized, like I said, but, don't go for the story as much. There's not going to be anything new in the story that you haven't seen, or anything that makes you sit up and go, wow, or maybe even get moved to an extent. This is a movie that really, glorifies Mammootty as an actor. You would want to see part 2 of who this Michael is. He's got this aura around him. Fantastic, and you want to see more of him, right? And so I would definitely watch a part 2. I think they've set it up in some ways for a part 2. Hey, Mammootty looks like a rock star, and it's great to see him in action. And hopefully the next movie would have a little bit more action, a little bit more interesting action, something we haven't seen before, etc. Rather than just camera angles and style and music, something in the fights that could have us say like, oh, we haven't seen that before. That would be interesting if they bring that up. So these are my thoughts, guys. If you've seen the movie, what did you think about it? Overall, even as a mass movie, I think this is how you should do it ideally. It's not over the top. At the same time, it's not a snooze fest, right? So in some ways there is a little bit of a balance, but as I mentioned, there are definitely elements that they could do better next time. So those are my thoughts. What are yours? Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be back with more movie reviews.